Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending the 5th of August 2023. Sunak thought, so that we don't get caught short, that we ought to resort to new fossil fuel being sought, but the idea for many isn't bought. Three men of different sorts were in court, a former icon of sport now having a lesson being taught. Trump with charges being brought about an election he fought and a result he tried to distort, and a guy who killed his wife as a last resort. Meanwhile, things are fraught in Portland Port. On Monday, Rishi stoked up impassioned passion when he said oil and gas were back in fashion. With the planet boiling, it doesn't seem cool to pick this moment to dig for fossil fuel. Of course, the scientists generally don't dig his scene, but motorists and others get what he means. Climate is changing and the earth may be burning. The oceans are rising, but is the tide turning? The ULEZ backlash shows people want normal lives, putting their heads in the sand till doomsday arrives. Why lengthen our lives if life ain't worth living? Why sacrifice when real polluters won't give in? A public sea change may be what Sunak's foreseen, granting 100 gas and oil licenses in the North Sea. The announcement he made caused massive despair to climate scientists and experts everywhere. But politicians don't do things without one ear cocked on how to get the voters to tick the right box. Our own energy security, the PM stressed, must not be forgotten in our net zero quest. But most environmentalists weren't enraptured, even with the planned investment in carbon capture. Greenpeace were not impressed, it's probably fair to say, as they climbed on the roof of Rishi's home on Thursday. Over the whole house black fabric was draped while the Sunaks were on a holiday escape. Rishi left for the States after he'd got in a state on LBC when Nick Ferrari said it ain't great that Portland Port hosts a barge, Bibby Stockholm, an offshore place to keep migrants, a kind of dock home. There's been bargy in the port, with locals not giving it much support, some on principle, others being NIMBY. For 3 weeks since it arrived, they viewed it quite dimly. Now, from the fire service, it's taken more rap, being described as a potential death trap. But Rishi has been bigging it up, giving it large, boasting about migrants being put on this barge. Critics say we could avoid this whole disaster if asylum cases were processed faster. Keir just insists the government's lost control, saying he wouldn't touch the plan with a large pole. Large pole or barge pole, Sunak doesn't give a fig, as long as those in small boats end up on one big. Shoplifting in Britain is now the worst of all time, fueled by the cost of living and organised crime, and there are signs shops can take no more. Out of control crime now causing the closing of stores. And another sign of the high street's woes, Wilko's looks like it could be about to close. On Thursday, for the 14th month in a row, the base rate went up, leaving borrowers low. Economic growth remains almost zero, and the fall in inflation is slower than slow. Rishi needed a break, but should he bother coming back? Especially with the family home under attack. On Monday, David Hunter's lawyer was caught by surprise when his client walked free from court. When the judge handed down his manslaughter sentence, he had already served the required 2 years of repentance. In 2021, David killed his wife Janice out of love and compassion, no suggestion of malice. Janice had blood cancer and wished she was dead. Her days became filled with more pain and more dread. She had pleaded with David to end her life he finally did, and then tried to join his wife. But suicide failed, and so began a living hell, facing a murder charge from a Cypriot cell. Compassionate people would surely concur the last thing David needed was some Cypriot stir. But in the debate on euthanasia, some say emotion mustn't make things hazier. Pro-life supporters will always insist alternatives to killing always exist, and weaker laws will help bad people who intend to cause someone's end to achieve their own ends. A new month and Trump's in court once more. The number of charges have now reached 74. This time it's about the 2020 election and his attempts to put the result into question. On Thursday he arrived at a courtroom in Washington with noisy pro- and anti-Trump crowds watching on. The former president stood as the 4 charges were read. To all 4, of course, not guilty was pled. If he is found guilty, it could well mean prison. His approval rating has, of course, risen. Trump will get the Republican nod by a romp, the only person, it seems, who can drain the swamp. For many, though, it's America's image down the drain, a place viewed by many with disbelief and disdain. Another former leader on the brink of disgrace, with charges the length of an arm to be faced, is the charismatic former PM of Pakistan, the once global pin-up boy, Imran Khan. 263 times his country capped him, as their top bowler, many times as captain. From balls and bails to a prime ministerial term, but on Saturday how the tables were turned. Inciting mass violence, one of the charges brought, offering Mr. Trump possible food for thought. No balls or bails, and no chance of bail, as Imran was sentenced to 3 years in jail for an alleged illegal state gift sale.